So I know we are between now and your desired break for lunch, but we still have one important topic to discuss and another achievement, which is the achievement on monitoring of EOSC and open science. I'm Andrea Herdegen from the Federal Ministry of Education and Research in Germany, and I'm also part of the member of the steering board. Special welcome also again to those who are following this session online. Please stay on and please continue to participate through Slido. And now, without much further ado, I want to jump into the topic which has been introduced already by Volker, for instance, during his speech on the achievements. All three parties of the EOSC governance, the tripartite governance, the European Commission, the EOSC Association, and the steering boards are engaged in monitoring in different ways, and we are going to explore this a little further during this session. We all together want to find out how far we have come in making open science the new normal, and how much and what each of the parties contribute to this end. So monitoring is, in a way, it's like a mirror you look into, and we want to look not only at the picture that we have right now, but we also want to look at the quality of the mirror. Do we need another perspective, another angle? Do we have to turn it round? So with this, I would like to introduce my speakers and would like to invite them to come to the stage as I do this. First of all, we have Thomas Neidenmark. He is Policy Officer in the Open Science Unit of RTE from the Commission, and he's going to please take a seat there, and I invite all of you to come on stage, and then we move on. The next two speakers that we have are Justina Kramarczyk and Ilaria Nadella. They both work for the EOSC Association, and they are experts in particular on the additional activities of the members of the EOSC Association, and will give us their view on this. And the last speaker I would like to invite to the stage is Sofia Abrahamsson. She works for the Swedish Research Council and is a member of the EOSC Steering Board, and there she also has the role of coordinating or being co-chair of the subgroup that deals with the monitoring exercise. So with this, I give the floor to Thomas to give us his views on EOSC and open science monitoring as a political instrument.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm Thomas Neidenmark from the Open Science Unit and the EOSC team, which I have spent 4 years with great interest. So I'm very happy to be here in the symposium. Monitoring is a very hot topic, and you have heard this word mentioned several times already today. It is very important. I cannot underline how much we have talked about this and how important it is to understand how we progress towards open science. As you also heard from Volker and others, there's a big difference now that we see, which is a strong opportunity, is that we have 43 countries in the EOSC Steering Board that has put the monitoring on the top of this agenda that we have in the EOSC Steering Board Expert Group, which I provide a secretariat to also in the EOSC team. In the symposium today and this week, you will see monitoring. Two frameworks first, from the EOSC Association, monitoring KPIs and AAPs, but also the monitoring framework of the EOSC Steering Board and together with the Commission, which is being developed and has been being developed for quite some time. Let's see if this works. Yes, this. So this slide you already see. From Michael's presentation, and I would like to stress again that for these 3 roles of the European Commission, monitoring comes back in all of these, and for Horizon Europe, we have a solid monitoring framework also. But when we look at the open access, open science implementations, I can look down there, sorry. To improve the practice and develop the enablers, we need to see the progress more clearly than we have done so far. And we need to have the continuous evidence to improve the monitoring all the time. Like Andrea said, with a mirror, we have to look all the time what's happening. And we have the study Michael also presented, so I will not go into depth in it. But you see here that there are challenges. There's still a long way to go for us to arrive where we want to be. And we need to monitor how the policies better can translate into the desired behavior. First of all, what is happening on the ground for the researchers to understand what fair data is, and then practice it so that we get more fair data into EOSC. We also need to use the monitoring to bridge these gaps. Volker talked about the policies, and he talked about the practices. And in between, we need to understand why is there a gap in between this in implementing the open science practices. This is something the monitoring needs to cover. And you will see soon from Sophia's presentation also that we have started this in the EOSC tripartite. The Commission, the Steering Board, and the Association have been discussing the monitoring for quite some time now. I think it's 18 months. And before that, a lot of projects have produced a great deal of intelligence. We have had lots of studies. We have had many expert groups providing and developing indicators and arguments and resources for monitoring. And all of this has now been analyzed and taken into account to this new monitoring frameworks that we have. Both the EOSC Association and the EOSC Steering Board has scrutinized this all. I want to mention, since Jan Rusak was on the stage earlier today, that also the landscape working group of the previous expert group, EOSC Executive Board, which was very important in the first implementation phase of EOSC, was running this landscape working group with great success, and which has been very important for the work, of course. So the Commission, the Steering Board, and the Association looks at complementarity, of course. But it doesn't stop there. We have also, as Michael mentioned earlier, the European Research Area Development, and this is also connected to a strong monitoring ambition, to monitoring the uptake and the implementation of their actions. And for open science and EOSC, this data will come from the monitoring that we develop here, monitoring and open science, of course. The other group I want to mention is the expert group, or the National Points of Reference expert group. We produce a report every second year for that expert group on the recommendations on access to and preservation of scientific information. And we are a bit delayed now with this report, but it's because we want to use the data from the current monitoring to feed into this report. And the opportunity to do that will be in the first quarter of next year. So if we look at the monitoring frameworks, we see here the EOSC Steering Board up to the right and the EOSC Association to the right. The monitoring coordination is very important. There are two different layers here, of course, because the EOSC Association has an obligation to monitor and report on the KPIs and the additional activities to the Commission. And the broader perspective, aside from that, is complemented with the EOSC Steering Board monitoring. But we need to acknowledge and understand that there are many monitoring initiatives out there that we can and and should interact with, of course. But the way to do that is, of course, to be very open. So these are principles that are included in the tripartite dialogue, to be very open, sharing, mainly walking in the open science talk, of course. And in the tripartite, we have agreed to this monitoring strategy to deploy a single joint capacity to monitoring the uptake of open science. This was discussed last year, and this has been a guiding principle for the collaboration and achievements this year. And so the ambition of this work where we have arrived now is, of course, to align the policies and practices that we see, especially in the EOSC Steering Board monitoring. This is the policies that are guiding the implementation and the practices that are concrete actions of the implementation. But of course, all this together, when we talk about the monitoring being open and inclusive, is to steer in the right direction towards open science. Because if we don't do this now, we perhaps will not achieve what we want to do by the end of the Horizon Europe and around 2030. So it is very important that we go in the same direction. And of course, it's a matter of complementarity also, and cover for other needs, and avoid the duplication of service to researchers and whoever is to answer a survey, so that we reuse data. Openness is very important in this aspect, of course. So there is a new agreed tool also for this. It's called the EOSC Observatory, which you will hear more about tomorrow. I think it was also already pointed at 11 o'clock tomorrow in Kepler. Over here, you will see the launch of the observatory. And so I think that Sophia will present some slides from the observatory, so I will not go into that. The discussion on the monitoring takes place everywhere, and I foresee that the many tripartite events that you saw Karel present earlier, they will continue next year, and they will continue to discuss implementation activities based on, I hope, the monitoring that is public now from today. So the first survey of the EOSC Steering Board is public already, and there's a public dashboard also for the data. And the next survey, as Sophia will present, will be much more rigid, with a lot of around 100 collection points for data. And this can really support the internal discussion in the countries and incentivize action. So this is my final slide. I want to say that this will help. I'm sure that the monitoring will help, and it can be used not as a benchmarking tool pointing fingers at someone who has not developed as far as someone else, like Volker said earlier today, but really a bench learning exercise where we can learn from each other. What do you have that I don't have? What can you learn from me? What can I learn from you? And I get this question sometimes from research performing organizations: who has this policy? Well, it's very difficult for me to know, of course. But if we ask the countries to visualize what they have for policies in place, this will for sure help the advancement towards open science, so that we can make it real. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much for this broad picture that you drew about the different aspects that we have. I want to ask one question before we move on, because we had in an earlier session this question: who are the customers of EOSC? Who are the customers of the monitoring, of the different monitoring exercises, and how does this feed into each other?
Yeah, very good. You followed Anna's instruction to pick up this question. I think you were first. Great. Yeah, I think the monitoring, usually when you talk about business intelligence and monitoring, you often come back to the board, and someone steering on the top should have the information. But I think that this monitoring initiatives and the dialogue that we have had in the EOSC Steering Board and the tripartite is really walking towards having the intelligence so close to the researchers as possible, to those who really practice, to understand the policies and where they come from, and to see the broad picture, like Volker also stressed earlier today. So I think all are the customers. But of course, initially, with the data we have now, what we see in the first survey, which Sofia will present, I think it's mainly policymakers who are the customers in the very first step, because we need to align to develop and deploy the policies needed to achieve this impact. So it's twofold, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much. So for the next presentation, I would like to ask Justina and Ilaria to give their view on the monitoring framework for the EOSC partnership.
Okay. Good morning, almost good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Justina Kramarczyk, and I'm Policy Officer in the EOSC Association. And today, together with my colleague Ilaria Nardello, we would like to give you a brief overview of the EOSC Association achievements on the monitoring of the performance of the EOSC partnership. And I will start with the decoding the additional activities which were mentioned today. So the additional activities, the monitoring of the additional activities, it's one of the key performance of the EOSC Association. And the additional activities, they're all in-kind and financial contributions of the members of the association to the development of the EOSC. And those contributions are, they need to be in the scope with the strategic research and innovation agenda. They need to progress, they need to be towards the objective of this SRIA, but what is important, that they shouldn't be covered by European Union funding. So it means that we closely follow all the activities which are nationally, locally, or regionally founded, with two exceptions. We also count the funds coming from RRF, so Resilience and Recovery Funds, as well the European Structural Funds. And maybe I should mention that EOSC Association has committed in the Memorandum of Understanding to contribute 500 million euro. And based on this, we are obliged to establish every year the plan of the additional activities and also to report on annual basis to the Commission on actual spendings. And here you can see the 9 categories which are common for all Horizon Europe co-program partnerships. So those categories are top-down established, but based on the information collected last year, we can already say that in terms of the EOSC relevance, we have 3 main categories. So for the first one is the support to additional RNI, where we can find all of the upgrades of the existing infrastructures, deployment of the FAIR tools, or for example, also deployment of the large-scale studies. Another one is demonstrators. So here we have all the investment in the new platforms, pilot use cases, so all new initiatives. And another one, I think quite important in terms of what has been said, all the activities related to the coordination and alignment between different research infrastructure, also between, for example, activities related to the missions, and all coordination activities between different actors in the ecosystem. And I think the most important slide, if we're talking about achievements, what we did over the past year, we did plenty of activities, and we started this AP journey in the second part of 2021 when we carried the pilot exercise, and the kind of brochure was established with the additional activities plan 2021, excuse me. And this brochure was also, these activities were totaling of 300 million euro. Then we moved forward and we rolled out the first survey. It was accessible to the all members, and based on the survey, based on the responses coming from the survey, we established, we set up, and also together with the European Commission during the Partnership Board, approved the additional activities plan with a total value of 312 million euro. We learned a lot from this exercise. We discussed a lot also with our members. We've taken this lesson into consideration. And in September 2022, the next survey was launched. The 84 members contributed to the survey. Thanks to this, thanks to the timely input, we submitted the first draft of the AP 2023 with a total value of 591 million euro. And what is the next step? Like later this year, we also expect to have this AP 2023 approved by the EOSC Partnership Board. And also the next year, we plan to start our reporting activities on the AP 2021 and 2022. But we shouldn't forget that the AP and additional activities are not only the numbers, but also the efforts of our members, plenty of efforts that we can observe from the plans, and we are about reading up, we already read them out. So we can see that we observe a lot of efforts, especially in terms of services and infrastructure. So we have a lot of new platforms, also repositories, e-repositories, different services offered by the members, fact checker tools, stations, infrastructure dedicated to the different disciplines. What is more, there are also policies, regulation, coordination activities from the open science national forums, through the special hubs, through the special reference group, also policies, national and institutional, which are coordinated by the dedicated bodies. And what is more, and I think it's quite important, that we also work on the soft skills in EOSC, on people, and people who will be skilled in this environment. So we can observe a lot of programs dedicated to the data stewardship, to the special mentoring, trainings on open science, RDM, open access as well, or even establishment the dedicated centers on special competences needed for EOSC. So I think this is quite important, and we would like to also, with our next GA, establish the discussion on the use cases on this, what is really being done and what is planned to be done in terms of our contribution, the EOSC Association contribution to EOSC. And with the next slide, I will give a floor to Ilaria.
Hello, good evening, afternoon, good morning, lunchtime, I guess. So this is the second part from the EOSC Association on the monitoring side. Our duties to monitor are written in our Memorandum of Understanding, and we just go quickly through what they're for, and we just try to understand where we're at in this effort, which is a bit different from what Justina presented. So the monitoring framework establishes the objectives for these partnerships. for this partnership. 3 general objectives that don't have key performance indicators, and another set of objectives, 9 specific objectives and 14 operational objectives that have specific indicators for how things should go. So there are big expectations, and this is a living document because these indicators may change over time. We may add some things, or we may alter the way they are written, depending on the needs of this community and of the Commission, and understanding how things are progressing. What is important, I would like to say, is that these objectives that we're pursuing are written up in the SRIA, in our Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, and so they're not anything different from what all are set out to do. What are these 3 main general objectives that we're after? Ensuring that open science practices and skills are rewarded and taught, and they become the new normal. And we heard since the beginning of this session that this is an objective that we're all pursuing at the various levels, and this is very reassuring. That we enable the definition of standards, the developments of tools and services that allow researchers to find access, reuse, and combine results, and to establish, of course, a federated infrastructure that will sustain our efforts. What does the monitoring framework look like in practice? A series of tables, nothing spectacular. A series of tables with a lot of information about what they are for and how they should be collected and who holds the information. So typically, you will see at the top of any table the name of the objective that the key performance indicator refers to, and then a need for a baseline is on all the tables for 2022. So all the indicators will need to have a baseline this year. And this is why we're running a monitoring framework survey that we'll go through in a moment. The tables also indicate a target for this indicator. So it tells us by a certain time what should this figure look like. So in this case, it is about the number of thematic European research infrastructures that are taken into account as a proxy for all the major scientific disciplines, which have documented standards and protocols for data sharing and reuse. By 2023, we expect that 60% of this landscape actually have fulfilled this target. We'll see whether it's true, and we're anxious to hear about the baseline. We report on this to the Commission, and we look for information either in documents that are available, or we ask directly the persons that are in these exercises. So because, as you have seen, the methodology for receiving the information is a survey, in most cases, sometimes it could be a desk study, but typically it is a survey, we have set out a survey, and it is the survey of the KPI baseline for 2022. What we've tried to do, we've applied the logic to the survey, which is complicated. It's so complex that some systems couldn't handle it. But this was done really to minimize the survey fatigue for the community. So we've tried to partition, segregate the questions that pertain to categories of members. And so your institution may be a research performing organization, it could be a service provider, it could be a research funding organization. In some cases, it's the association that is a respondent for the survey, or the Horizon Research Project coordinators, or the research infrastructures, as we've seen. So when you receive the questionnaire, you will receive a set of questions that are for all the members, and a set of questions that are for the specific type of organization you're in. This is what the survey looks like. I'm not going to walk you through a training session, but I would like to emphasize the need that we receive responses. The survey has been open since the end of October, and it was supposed to stay open until the 11th of November, but it will be extended. We have received some 40 responses over the membership base, which is over 600. So we would like to encourage you all to provide some information. If you are into any issue, if you cannot respond, if you don't know what to do, if you have difficulties, please get back to us, info@eos.eu or monitoring@eos.eu, and we'll try to help you. This is just the process. So the survey was launched on the 20th of October to be closed. We had a series of survey trainings. I guess a lot of you attended, but still we would need to, we would be happy to help you if you are in trouble, even if these are ended. And we had the participation of Carol, who lended his time to this, to ensuring that we understood what the process was all about. The 25th of November, the survey will close. I'm sorry, this animation will not be perfect, but from the end of November until March next year, we'll do the analysis of the survey to report to the Commission at the next Partnership Board meeting in April or sometime in spring next year. So again, it closes on the 25th of November, so please give us your answers if you can and get back to us if you have difficulties. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Ilaria and Justina, for the presentations on the, well, two different parts of your tasks. And one question, perhaps a bit provocative question I would like to ask, is about, again, about the customers, and in your case, the researchers you're dealing with. Well, the word additional activities is a bit, can be heard in a double sense. It's just an additional activity, but what is actually the added value of this exercise for the researchers? Is there any, or is it just a reporting that you have to do? Perhaps you have some feedback from your correspondence in who you address with your questionnaires, and that would be interesting.
Well, I think the customers for us are the same as for Thomas. It's the Commission, really. Yeah? The main interested party in this information. The Commission requests this information, and we're providing it. The reason is to monitor how the partnership is progressing, and the ultimate goal is actually to hit on those targets that are strategic, operational, specific for the partnership. As Thomas mentioned earlier, we're progressing in a certain direction, and we need to get there, and this is a monitoring process to help us, and if necessary, correct the trajectory. I believe, however, that the researchers can be also informed by the results of the survey, and knowing where everything is going can be an encouragement or not, depends on how things are going, but let's assume things are going quite well and we're progressing. I think it's going to be an evidence that something is happening and that we all need to jump on the same train and make it happen. So for me, this is I would take it like this, as a really a way to observe what we're all doing together and ensure that we can bring this message of how we're progressing to the various stakeholders. It could be the Commission, but it could be the whole world. I mean, globally, I think we can set an example, and these are factual results. It's not words. These are quantifiable, tangible data information that can serve as a basis for conversations and leveraging additional actions. You want to add something?
Yes, maybe I will add from the perspective of the person who is leading on the additional activities, because we have gone through different conversation with our members, and it's the additional value for sure. It's that those exercise brings association closer to the members, and we can see what kind of developments are happening at the institutions. But I think it's also a very valuable exercise for the institution. We received many feedback messages that those exercises allowed our members to rethink what kind of development happened with the support from the ministry, with the support of the national funds, and also to rethink what is really needed for the researchers, for the workforce in general, because it's not only about researchers, but also administration and policymakers, and rethink what is really needed, what maybe we need to rethink, where we need to look for the funds, and what kind of need we should express. So I think it's also the good exercise in those terms. And I think the third thing is the gap analysis, so to find where we need to really, maybe what kind of areas we need to support. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think this is already quite a lot that we have collected here. So sharpening the vision, breaking it down a little to the details, and also identifying the areas where I think all levels have to act, the researchers, but that's also part of the political exercise. And yeah, so thank you for this. And well, speaking about the political exercise, I would like Sophia to give her presentation, and this comes back to monitoring framework for the national contribution to EOSC and open science with the political or the ministries and the countries and associated countries and the member states in the focus. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm Sophia Abrahamsson. I work as a senior research officer at the Swedish Research Council, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the EOSC Steering Board subgroup, National Contributions to the EOSC. And so for the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you more about the monitoring framework of the national contributions to EOSC and open science, and the work that the EOSC Steering Board subgroup that is dedicated to this work, which includes also participants of the three parties of the tripartite collaborations as well, for the Commission, the Association, and the Steering Board members mainly. And this has resulted in a survey to collect information from member states and associated countries on the EOSC readiness. And the purpose, of course, of this exercise of monitoring national contributions is to collect information from the Horizon Europe associated countries and member states regarding their commitments at the national level, such as national policies, investment, and other open science practices. So the EOSC Steering Board subgroup on monitoring is tasked with, among other things, the benchmarking of activities of the national contributions and to monitor the benefits of national policies to the research communities. The subgroup had its first meeting in spring last year, and we have now a survey based on a monitoring framework, which is the results of 1.5 years of discussions with several iterations, workshops, and coordination with other related initiatives on open science and EOSC, and that you previously heard Thomas talking about as well. The aim is, of course, to see complementarity with other initiatives, monitoring initiatives, collecting information on open science implementation within the European collaboration with the association, the projects, and other experts groups in the European constellation. So this is the monitoring framework for national contributions that we're working with as a base. And this has been developed to monitor the progress towards the long-term vision of making open science the new normal by 2030. And the framework outlines 3 dimensions of monitoring. It's about policies, practices, and impact within different priority areas of open science, open access to publications, research data management, infrastructures, and EOSC, citizen engagement, incentives, rewards, and skills. So the first pilot phase and a survey, which was published in 2021, we initially focused on 3 key areas for EOSC. So the focus of this survey has been on research data management, on infrastructures and EOSC. And the other areas, as you've heard, are now getting into the next iteration of the survey. We have had questions on policies and practices, including use cases, mandated organizations, and monitoring exercises in different countries, which you will see more about later. This survey has been open for collection of data and closed in the end of the summer this year. So we had quite a good response rate to the survey. There were 34 out of 39 countries that have validated the survey, which means that there is now already a rich material with regards to policies and practices, including use cases, and which is now fully available for the EOSC Steering Board to explore and to learn from. But I'd also like to announce that on the EOSC Observatory, which you heard will be launched tomorrow at an event here at the symposium, there is already now a public online dashboard open where the data collected from the Steering Board survey in 2021 can be explored. The data is displayed on an interactive dashboard and can there be visualized and exploited. And this will allow you to explore the progress of open science and EOSC and look at the EOSC readiness of the countries that have provided the data in there. So this dashboard is now public and will allow anyone to scrutinize the steps that are taken to advance open science. And as you can see here from this screenshot of the dashboard, you can navigate here between national data on policies and practices here. And so I want to invite you all to have a look at the data and explore the information that is in there and consider how this can be useful for you. We think that, or hope that this data will be extremely useful for countries to learn from each other, to learn what other countries are doing to advance EOSC, and open science, and perhaps think about what can be adapted in other national settings. I think we won't have much time in this session to get into the results of the survey. We will show some of them tomorrow in the session of the launch of the EOSC Observatory. But I want to highlight that there are also a couple of upcoming reports that are linked to this work. So you can read more about the work on the survey of national contributions 2021 and the monitoring framework in these reports, which will soon be available in Zenodo. And I just want to extend here a huge thanks to the EOSC Future project for the work on this. There will also be other reports coming out with suggestions for developing methodology and, of course, a catalogue of use cases which you have heard about before and where some of these national examples are going to be displayed. We have learned a lot from the work with developing the first pilot survey, and there are a number of lessons learned which are now also shaping the work with the survey 2022. And very briefly, the aim with this work has been now to keep it simple, to keep the survey easy to understand and to accept, to test, to ensure that we do extensive testing in the intended environment for who's going to reply to the survey and understand the interpretations of the questions. We're suggesting that an interactive dashboard incentivizes data use, and that coordinating monitoring across different levels will ensure that it's meaningful and avoid duplications. So the aim here has been to make the survey as self-explanatory as possible. So what are the changes that we will see in this second survey and how this is being put into practice? So to begin with, a new indicator framework has been developed with the support of EOSC Future, and this has gone now through several iterations and has been discussed with the steering board and other relevant stakeholders. So this new survey is aiming, well, it's more ambitious and about the data that it will collect, and the scope for open science is larger than in the first survey. So as you can see from this slide here, the categories have been extended, and we're now looking at 8 key areas of open science here. In addition, it now also includes questions about research funding organizations and research performing organizations at an aggregated national level. The collection is also more automatized in this new survey, being largely similar across the different open science areas here with very similar questions. You can see here an example of what these questions look like in the selected questions here to the left. It's national questions on the country level. Are there specific policies? Are they mandatory? Are there financial strategies, and how many research funding and performing organizations have a policy on the indicated area? Do you have use cases, and how much did your country financially invest? you will see here to the right that some of the output and result will be automatically collected to complete the picture. And this example here to the right illustrates for publications where some of the data is going to be collected through the open air science observatory. So for this type of data, it's the country manager that will be asked to confirm if the data that is already in there is correct. And this is just to make it as easy as possible. So over these 8 categories and the dimensions covered by the survey, as you heard mentioned, this will be over 100 collection points. And it can be important to note here as well that the manager for the country's data is not expected to do this work on their own, but encouraged to coordinate with other national actors to assign contributors to provide data relating to their areas of expertise. So, and with this, I'd like to announce that the survey on national contributions to EOSC for 2022 is now open. All member states are invited to answer to its country survey via the observatory. The closing date is the 1st of April next year. You're encouraged to invite contributors among your national experts on the indicated areas related to open science. And please spread the word so all countries are invited to participate. You don't have to be associated to Horizon Europe for this, and we'll see as many countries as possible to provide and display the data. Benchmark and bench learn together. Any country can participate. And I'd like to thank you for your attention. And if you want to hear more about the national commitments to EOSC, there is also a session tomorrow afternoon at 16:30 in the Meridian.
Thank you, Sophia. And so we all have the great task ahead of us to answer to the new questions and the broader the broader set of questions that we have now to complete the picture of open science and the vision. One question, short question to you before I give the floor to all of you for one last comment, because we're running out of time. My question is, in this first round of monitoring exercises to the countries, were there any surprises, anything that that in terms of results or in terms of process that were other than you expected?
I think from having a look at the results, if you say, well, I'd say no bigger surprises on the policy areas for me. This is, if you say, rather a snapshot of what areas are covered by the open science policies in different countries, and can be used more as a starting point for finding out more information about what is really in there and what specific areas are more contained within there. Then, of course, as you heard previously, we also collected some information about financial investments, and here the interpretation has been a little bit more difficult. So there is continued work with that still going on, and you will hear more about it in the session tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. So I don't think we have any comments from the online audience.
No new questions.
Thank you, Sarah. So my question for the last statement for all of you would be to look in the future. The year 2025 has been mentioned before. How can the monitoring exercise contribute to to reaching specific goals and to make progress, visible progress by 2025, and also how can the whole of the monitoring exercises fit together in this context? Is there a way of progress, you see? And I start with, from there, from Ilaria.
Well, I think there is a synoptic view we can gain, let's say, from these different views or angles of view. So I think in the end, the aim is to really be able to have a full picture at the different levels, whether they are institutional, national, supranational, European, and also from the policy side, the practices side, and the skills side. There are various aspects that we're monitoring through different exercises, really, and in different ways. So the intention here is to work together to have a full picture of whether the EOSC is happening and whether, especially open sciences, whether the EOSC is impacting on its ultimate goal, which is creating open science and enabling the fair sharing of data, et cetera, and all that we've been saying in these days.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I fully agree, and that it's crucial to have all these three levels represented, because they bring added value, and then we can really grasp the full picture of what is happening in EOSC and what kind of objectives we need to set up for the future.
I think for where we hope to be in 2025, well, the subgroup on monitoring the contributions have presented the opinion paper as well, with specific targets of where we hope that the deployment of policies are going to look like in 2024, actually. So that is hopefully something that will be achieved by that time. I think the exercise of looking at the different initiatives as well, by combining policies and practices here, is that this will help us to identify gaps in between both. So where are the policies, but where are they not getting implemented, or where are the missing practices, or the other way around, where are the good practices being held, but no policies to support them and to make these coherent.
Yes, thank you very much. A very good comment. So from my perspective, working at the Commission, I'll come back to the coordination issue and the tripartite ambition with this year to coordinate, to develop a joint mechanism or capacity, which is really a strategy for coordination. And now we have seen these two amazing initiatives of monitoring. And one immediate question that comes to mind is, of course, is there a duplication? No, there's not, actually, because if you dig into the details, there is not duplication, only in one area, perhaps, which is the use cases. And that is a very interesting, which is also to me a surprise about in the use cases. But there is a big harmonization and not an overlap. But we had discussed, I think it was only in skills and training, we saw one possible overlap, and then we sorted out the rest. So it's very promising, and the ambition still is, and the work is going on to harmonize also the visualization and coordination where possible of the data in the EOSC observatory that you saw, so that the information can be, because transparency, openness, and showcasing the examples that is key. And having this presentation, back to what Ilaria said also, to what's in it for researchers, to understand and see where this is going. So being very open and generous with the monitoring is key in my view. And one concrete example where I see we need to work a lot on all 3 levels in the coming years is on the use cases. Because that was kind of in the first study from the EOSC Steering Board, kind of a side effect in an open text question. What do you do in practice? And that generated a lot, around 70 use cases that were very interesting. So this has now been built into the next survey, and there is an Excel sheet available for anyone who wants to scrutinize this. It will be open also for anyone to look at. But that's where also the countries, back to what Volker said, can matchmake. What happens in my country? What happens in your country? How can we learn from each other? So the mutual learning can really advance fast. And with that, I want to end with a very positive note that we have seen the Ukrainian National Plan for Open Science, and it was produced only in Ukrainian, of course, but the Commission Services has translated this plan, and we have communicated it back to Ukraine. It's a solid and very ambitious plan with a lot of objectives, measures, and indicators for these objectives. Actually, one thing that we learned from the first survey, that many countries had objectives for or activities for open science, but no indicators. But in this national plan, there are indicators. So I think this is an exercise to bring to the expert group and see which policy in your country matches with these indicators, where you can provide examples and help them develop this. So it's very promising for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we heard a lot of arguments in favor of having this monitoring exercises in favor of making it even more converge even more and become more interlinked. But and also thank you again for pointing at the use cases. I think from my point of view, this came in fact as a little surprise. I mean, it was, as you said, a small question, which now turned out to be much, get much more weight, but I think rightly so, because this is the way we can learn from each other. So this is an important part of the whole exercise. So thank you everyone for listening and for discussing, and please engage in the various exercises wherever you are, because we need this to form and work on our vision of EOSC. Thank you.